at allpointstv.com, and we are one day past the memorial service of the great. I think we can say the word great in the sense that this man was quite a handful when you think about how he started out at 18 to set up an organization called, you know, uh, I mean that organization that was set up when this guy was just out of high school, and everybody knew that this was something special. This guy was somebody that he was 18 years old, but his knowledge level and his ability to think out of the box was very notable. And his turning point, USA. You don't have. I don't think at 18. I'm just going to look at my own high school. I don't think at 18 years of age I was at any level of talking about setting up an organization. I was trying to find a college to go to, and I hadn't really thought out my life plan. But this guy at 18 was on a mission at that point, and I was listening to some of the discussions that were going on because I watched the whole thing. That was started about 12 o'clock officially in the afternoon, and then it went on to about five, a little bit after five. I sat there the whole time, and I wanted to watch it on multiple stations to see what other stations were doing. So I watched it on my favorite station, which is Newsmax. But I was also interested in what's going to be said on stations like ABC and CNN, and so I had it surrounded on different networks so I could watch it later on and find out how they'd approach the same topic. But I pretty much well already knew what CNN would do with it, and I knew what ABC would do with it. And it was true to form that they would downplay some aspects of it that should have been not downplayed, and then it would um, upscale some of the things that should have been downplayed. I knew it would not be a fair shot at what was really going on. You had to see it for yourself in order to know what was really taking place because they're going to definitely slant it. I would tell you this: in that 5 plus hours of programming, and that's what it is. They call it a program, but it's programming. The television set is really not designed to educate; it's designed to program. And the programming yesterday was pretty much around this notion of what I would call, altruism, and I think altruism is what we saw, and all the comments were made except the comments made by Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, and those are the two comments, quite frankly, that were uh, very much on target about what morality we should be talking about, given the fact this man has some substance and has something to offer to society, and to have them acting as if his sacrifice was somehow noble. And his wife was saying, and that you know they know not what they do, and she was dabbing at her eyes every second, trying to maintain. She had the makeup on and things like that, so she was dabbing her eyes, trying to keep the tears from flowing. And it was a very emotional moment. I was very much broken up over it. I'm sure most person watching it understood the tremendous pain she was going through to get through the comments she had to make at the memorial service. It was very difficult for her. Just the abruptness of the death of her husband on the 10th of this month, and if you have some time and the person is sick, and over time the outcome is going to be terminal, and you have a chance to adjust to it. You're still broken up over it, but it's really something, I think, when you just abruptly you're there and then you're not there, and I was broken up when I saw his wife, a very noble person, Erica Kirk, who was trying to maintain her composure, and very difficult for her because they had a very good marriage, and he honored her, and she honored him. And her comment was she was trying to ask God to allow her to be the kind of wife that her husband needed for him to be doing the things he was doing, and he wanted to be the kind of husband that she needed, and I often told her that. Wanted to know how could he be a better husband. They had a very good. They people were saying that they were marveling over the marriage that they had. But I was watching the program to see what the reaction would be when different speakers would come to the microphone and they would make their comments and their presentation. All the presenters did a wonderful job. By the way, this was a well organized program, and I think it served Kirk very well. I think Charlie Kirk would be very proud of how the program was organized and the comments were made both about him and about uh, Turning Point USA and the organization he set up. You could tell it was a very classic organization, well structured and organized, because the ones that came there representing the group were well organized, and they were just tremendous presenters. You could tell the number of the people inside that organization. I don't have any doubt in my mind that they're going to go forward with the group. It did not die out with the death of Charlie Kirk. I think it's going to go forward, and I think it's going to obviously be changed because his wife is now going to be the CEO. And really, Charlie Kirk is a very rare. Not everybody can be a Charlie Kirk, and so I don't think it will not be the same organization, obviously, because you can't replace a person of that caliber. But I tell you what really got the applause, and it shows you where the idea of morality is in this country, was when the widow, Erica Kirk, said, "Father, forgive them." This young man, she said, and she was in tremendous pain, and she said this, that I forgive him. And I'm sitting there with my mouth stuck out. I'm not forgiving him. And I'll tell you what I said in my post today on Facebook. I want this man dead. Now, I don't mean vigilante dead. I don't mean we're talking about mob rule here. But what is mob rule? Well, I want to go through the process. I want to go through, give the man due process, have the trial, have the verdict, have the conviction, and then because you have the capital punishment in Utah, and they have the capital punishment that can be used in different ways, and one way can be used as the firing squad. And I think that we have that as an appropriate measure to be taken with machine guns, every gun being loaded. I can understand why, in front of the audience, you think that you are being holy by saying, as she said, that her husband would have wanted her to say that she forgave the man. Here's a man now that made her a widow, has a children growing up without their father, and have one daughter asked the mother after about the second day or so where the father wasn't home, asked the mom, when is dad coming home? And I don't know what the answer was, but I can understand the child not recognizing the permanence of the loss, the father not being there, and that he would never be there again. I could understand that. And the more I understood that in the finality of it and thought about it in that sense, the matter I got at this conclusion that this man made by that disorderly act he involved himself in on the 10th of September, where this man cold bloodedly went up on that building and was laying down and moving and getting in position to fire that shot and had much time to think about it and took this man's life. And the ones that were making the comments about it, appropriate comments about it, they were the ones that I noticed ABC, they were talking about how Trump had disrespected the funeral of this man, the funeralizing of this man, and so on and so forth. Because Donald Trump said that he does not. He said that I would take exception to my friend Charlie Kirk because I would say that I don't love my enemies. I hate my enemies, and I knew that was going to be a story the next day. And when Stephen Smith got up there and made his comments, I knew that those remarks were going to get flagged for him saying that you're nothing and you're not gonna ever be nothing, and you never produced nothing, and went on and talked about how the person who did it that is nothing. And I knew that was not going to play because they think it's supposed to be so contrite, so forgiving, and that's the morality they want us to think we should be, in fact, pledging ourselves to. It's a false morality. This altruistic view that people ought to make of themselves sacrificial animals, that you are supposed to, in fact, turn the other cheek so that virtue can be sacrificed to that which is not virtuous, and you are sacrificing virtue for that which has no virtue.
See, my understanding of scripture, the turn the other cheek thing is like minor offenses. It doesn't say allow people yourself to be slaughtered. And another thing is too, I detest when something like this happens. People come out who have no connection to it, no familiar connection with it, say we forgive this person. It's not up to them to forgive the person anyway. It's not.
Well, I'll tell you what we do here, even in minor infractions. Look at what happens when you did not punish these crimes at a lower level and you let these people out without paying bail and so on and so forth. Look what happened to the society. They got troops in the nation's capital right now. And in Donald Trump's comments he was making in the commemoration last evening, he was talking about how they're getting ready to go into this city and that city, going to go into Memphis, going to Chicago. You can name a number of the cities. All the metropolitan areas are now out of control. But where did it start? It started by being licensed, by turning the other cheek, not demanding retribution for any act that leads to less than civility in society. And anything that you do not, in fact, impose upon that which is not civil, you're going to get more of it. And now every city in the country is out of control. And you can brag about what happened in Washington, D.C., and I give the president a lot of credit. Look how long it took to do that. And there's certainly the authority of the president to impose martial law or whatever law you have to impose in the federal capital, because that's not a city, that's a district by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Constitution, and it's just floating out there by itself, and it's a federal construction. And the president had the right to go in there and override anything that Bowser was doing, who's a mayor, but the president's the president of the United States, and that district comes under his purview without having to go through anyone else to bring the result about that he brought about by putting federal troops on the street. He was bragging about how safe it is and so on, and I give him a lot of credit for that. But it should have been done a long time ago, because now it's every city like that. And this idea of turning the other cheek, I'm gonna read something to you in a few minutes from this book here that I brought. But it's a false morality to talk about altruism, because what it does for the human being, it makes the human being a sacrificial animal. You're supposed to be sacrificial in the face of all this adversity that's being put upon you in society by those that do not have virtue, and we're supposed to bow down to it and to submit ourselves to it by turning the other cheek and so on and so forth. No, I want to tell you this. Morality is that if you, in fact, falsely strike someone and you're doing the things that guy did on that transit, for example, where that woman got on that we're talking about the woman from Ukraine. She came here because of the danger in Ukraine and took a low level job. Didn't want to be on the government dime. She wanted to work. So she had a job and a pizza parlor to earn her keep. And just got on the transit, unassuming, and sat down in front of this guy. He's over there leaning with a hood on and kind of hidden away as if he had no concerns and no ill will toward her and so on and so forth. And this guy's in there plotting. And when she sat down, he stands up and stabs her and just continually stabbed her. And he had been, in and out of the jail, did they say 14? I think 14 times. Just in and out, just a revolving door. And what did they think that was going to lead to in terms of one event after another and then no punishment that follows the event? What are you doing but encouraging more of it at a different level? Because if they don't punish at that level, why should you feel that you're going to punish at a different level? And as it begins to get more and more exponentially out of control, you have what we have right now. No city in America is safe. You can continue to fool yourself in saying that this country is this in terms of all the countries in the world. I think that the UN has counted 192 countries, and we are supposed to be the top country in the world. We keep saying that. It's like a broken record. We keep saying that, and it keeps playing the same thread over and over again. We're the greatest country the world has ever seen, and so on and so forth. What other countries do you know of where you can't go into one of the cities that's safe? The reason why this has happened is because we are not practicing morality. We have a false morality in place. Altruism is a false morality. And as his widow, whose daughter asked her, "Mom, when is Dad coming home?" After the second or third day and the dad not there, because this man loved his children. The children loved their dad. You saw that when they did that program on that morning program on Fox. And there's a dad sitting up there on the couch, and the children, the two daughters are right into dad, and he picks them up, and you could tell the love that was in that family. And this man took that from them, took that from those children, took the husband from the wife, took the Kirk marital family from the rest of his family and took a man out of the landscape, the political landscape, that had tremendous potential to do more than what he had done in such a short period of time. Because this man set up the Turning Point USA when he was 18 years old. I don't know of any high school student who has ever done that. I can't think of, when I was coming out of high school, I was just trying to get, I was glad to walk down the aisles and pick up the diploma at the end of the march down the aisle to pick up my diploma. When they called my name out, I was just thinking about, I've been in school 12 years, and here's what I got to show for it. And I was very glad that I was at the end of the process they had to go through to get that piece of paper that I had. I had not even figured out at that point what the next step was. I knew I was going to go to some college, but I wasn't sure which one. And I was playing it by ear. And in fact, when I came out of high school, I stayed out a semester before I went to college because I was 17 years old and I wanted to kind of get a little bit more grounded. And so I was 17 and a half when I finally went to college, having been promoted when I was in elementary school. So I was trying to get a little bit more. I didn't feel like I was mature enough because I had the wrong idea what college was about too. But I didn't think I was mature enough to be on the college campus with these scholars as I saw it. That's what I thought college was. And so I stayed out a semester. But when those children were asking the mom, the daughter, the oldest of the two children, asked the mom, when is dad coming back? And I don't know what the answer was, but I can imagine how excruciating that was for her to have to ask that question, because the answer to it was their dad is not going to ever come back. What that man did in cold blood with forethought, and what's that word they're now using? Something about corruption. This man had thought this out.
Here's the thing: the shooter's dad was a sheriff's deputy for 27 years, Washington County, Utah. Okay, 27 years, and I'm sure that he thought because the child grew up in a household about law and order, that would have been like through osmosis, probably would have been transmitted to this kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, as much as I dislike cops, I can imagine this guy right now is going through a hell that I wouldn't want to imagine.
My
Anybody.
goodness.
Yeah.
Your child, any father um, would be horrified that they produced you produced this monster. This monster, uh, in families, you don't have every child out of a cookie cutter. Every child coming up and you stamp their forehead, and that's a process, and each one comes out the same way. You could have a family like the Cosby family, and the idea he was uh, the country's dad, and you look at at these children. One comes up and they are in this zone, another one comes up in a different zone, and they're the same mother and father. And sometimes it's the fact that the first child comes out and it's like an experiment, and you got trying to get it right, and all the other. But some of the other children coming out behind them after that child has been experimented on, and they come out worse than the one that's been experimented on. There's no there's no one formula. I tell you, my first shock when I was shocked by knowing the Nelson family. Oz and Harriet used to come on TV on Sunday, and we watched that program religiously. I thought the family was perfect. It stunned me when I saw Ricky Nelson in having a drug problem, and I didn't know he was having problems when he was up there singing. we just like the program at the end. The dad was just trying to calm down his demons by giving him something to do in the program. But the singing that he did had nothing to do with the program. It was just something to satisfy some urges that he had to express himself beyond that little script he was reading every Sunday. But look how that turned out. And then the deaf part is another part of it, because I remember when I was in elementary school, and my first grade English teacher, Mrs. Sampson, that was a long time ago. I couldn't tell you how she looked if I had a gun put to my head and they're trying to make me recall how she looked. I remember the name, but I do know that when she died, I'm in that first grade class. I do remember the principal coming in there. Mr. Wyndham came in the classroom and announced us that our teacher had passed, and I'm in that classroom all the rest of that year, not knowing the finality of what that meant or what he had said when we came in the classroom and announced that she had passed. I didn't have a handle on that. And so I waited that whole year waiting for her to come back. And every day I went in there thinking maybe today she'll be here. But I couldn't process that she was there and then not there because it's so abrupt. And a child can't process it because they didn't see any stages they went to get to the end result, the terminal result. And so they just see the dad and then they don't see him anymore. And the child wants to know, when is dad coming home? I'll tell you another example that I can give you about that. I was listening to Christine King, Dr. King's daughter, and she spoke at the public library on one of the one of the occasions of her father, and she said, "All of you are celebrating my father's birthday." She said, "But I was mad at my dad because while you were celebrating the fact that he had done these things and those other things in the civil rights movement, I was mad at my dad because he was there and he was not there, and the absence was what I was feeling. Wasn't feeling this aura that he carried as a member of the civil rights movement and part of that clique, that civil rights clique that was running the movement, which is yet to be understood, by the way. But it was very riveting to listen to her giving her testimony about how she saw it, because everybody thought, well, their father would be celebrated because look at the iconic image that he's left behind. Although the image itself can be looked at through a number of other texts people don't read, so they don't understand the whole picture, and they don't read, for example, Johnny Williams's book called "The King God Didn't Save." Read that book and see what Johnny Williams is talking about, and also the documents and things of that sort. And so even that celebratory aspect has some questions about it, but okay, be that as it may, I'm talking about looking at it through a child's eye of how that loss is not understood because you can't process it, particularly with it being so abrupt. There Monday and then Tuesday not there. And that child asking, I can imagine the pain of a child asking the mom, when is dad coming home, and how broken up you'd have to be to have to deal with that question, because you have to explain it to your child so it makes some sense to your child, knowing they're not able to handle it, no matter how it's explained. Their dad is not there. And I saw how broken up she was and how excruciating it was for her to practice this unnatural morality. She was She was barely able to be heard, whispering, "Father, forgive them." This young man, "Father, forgive them for knowing not what they do." The man knew what he was doing. The man thought it out. He left a note at the place where he was staying and told his trans boyfriend, you could say girlfriend, he's transitioning from a man to a woman. This a man. He's sleeping with a man. You're not transitioning to no female. You can't transition out of your gender. You're born into the gender, you're gonna die in it. There is no such thing as a transitional gender. It's spreading this sickness in the society, and then when people go off, they want to act like they're surprised at what they're producing. I have to tell you another little thing on the way to my main point. I want to read something to you about this morality that you think that you're practicing because you're practicing a false morality. There's nothing moral about altruism. Altruism is a false morality because it asks the virtues to be sacrificial. For what? I wrote today in my post. I know it's going to raise a lot of controversy, but I said in my post, I want this man dead. And that's why they're talking about Steve Miller wasn't conciliatory, used the funeral in order to go off on a tangent. He was the one that's on the point. The rest of them were off on a tangent. They're up there clapping because this man, his wife is saying that he should be the man that killed her husband, took their children, father away from them, and this man should be forgiven. I'm not ready to forgive him, not today, not tomorrow, not forever. This man took a person that at 18 years of age came out of high school. You know, this man, uh, uh, Charlie Kirk, had enrolled in a junior college. And some of the people that recognized his talent was bigger than the classroom. They recognized that. And some of them told him that he'd be wasting his time in the classroom. He was bigger than that. But he enrolled in a junior college and then dropped out because he found out that wasn't his stick. His mission was different. And they were mocking him one time about when he's on the college campus saying, "Well, you dropped out." Yeah, he dropped out. He said, "Yeah, but I have this company and I have this many employers that I employ and so on and so forth because that's where he was making a difference."
Well, another thing is too, I had a friend I knew in college, and I spent a long time in college, all right? I had a friend who spent 1 or 2 semesters in college, decided it wasn't for him, and he started a landscaping company. I worked for him during the summer. He's doing that still, and he makes good money. He's got a good house, got a great life going on. And that's the problem thing is people see what is the purpose of you going to college? Is it you to get a job or you want to enrich yourself? I had the ability to do what I wanted to do. Okay. But if it's for the bulk of the population, it's like it's you are gearing up to get employment. So you're trying to go to an area that allows you to even may have more knowledge so you can start your own business or whatever. But that's what the purpose of it is. See, that's why the left denigrates people who drop out of the system because they want you to be in there so they can indoctrinate you.
That's exactly right.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, and it's a weeding out process where at each level you have a lot of person you played with in the elementary school. You're all on the school ground playing, catch with the ball, and some you had a lot of things you would do to kind of work your energy level down. Then you go to class and you can sit down and things of that sort. And people did a lot of playing outside. But then when you go to we went to elementary school grade 1 through grade 8. Then you went to the high school, but the annex, like my high school had an annex. The ninth graders went to a annex before they went to the real high school. The annex was on a campus. It was part of the high school. It was like down a little bit from the high school itself because you were a ninth grader, very impressionable, and you're around these big kids. And you're older and you coming out of elementary school, fresh out of elementary school, and maybe you're not prepared to deal with them on that more mature level. So they had a little campus you went through. But you notice that the ones that were in ninth grade, even there, the ones that were in grades 1 to 8, some of them had not made it to the annex of that high school. And then some that were in the annex in ninth grade, they didn't make it to 10th grade, where the school was a little bit up the road, where you went 10, 11, and 12. Now, there's another thing that I noticed in that school that I look back over it now, and that is that in 10th grade, all the students had to have gym. You had a grade in physical education. And I noticed in the physical ed class, the gym teachers, they had two male, the boys were one end of the gym and the girls were one end of the gym. And on our end, they had the two gym teachers. Both of them had whistles, and they would blow the whistle, and you run around in your half court of the gym, just running around the gym. And when your tongue is hanging out, they blow it, and you can stop, get a breather, and you're there huffing and puffing. And then Mr. Brown, his name was Major Brown. We thought Major was his title. We didn't know it was his first name, so we always called him Major Brown. He's always busting us in our chest, and he's always telling us, "What's your father's name?" We would tell him our father's name. I wouldn't call your father. He would. I would say, "Mr. So and so." Well, we didn't know Major Brown. Every major to me was like you in the army or something. We thought he'd come out of the military. He's like a military person, the way he handled his class. And so people called him Major Brown. We didn't know that Major was his first name. But he would blow that whistle, and you were sitting there, and you're huffing and puffing, and then he'd blow the whistle again to start running again. I didn't know at that time, as I look back at it now and look at it and see what was really going on there, but they had connected the gym class to the math class, the English class, and those other classes, the history, science, and so on, so that when you got those classes, you could sit down. You didn't have to have Ritalin. You had to have gym. You go in those gym classes now and see them sitting in the bleachers, and they think it's a Ritalin problem because they don't understand how you connect the classes up so each one does a part get a piece of the part of the educational process so they can do each part well by them all working as a seamless whole. But you don't understand that, and so you think it's a Ritalin problem. You think the child got to be stunned into sitting down by giving them some kind of Ritalin or some kind of drug, the drug them to sit down.
Now you're a teacher for 39 years, right?
39 years.
Okay, so you probably they wanted to put me on Ritalin when I was a kid, and I didn't fit the bill. No, my mom took us to the doctor, our family doctor. He was a wise guy, really intelligent old man, and he basically very common sense. And he said, "Kids are kids." He goes, "My kids like yours." He asks questions. He's inquisitive. He bounces around a lot, mentally. He said, why don't the kid? You don't want him to sit there sleeping all day, So I mean, that's what he said. So he saw that he was, and that was like 50 some years ago, because I'm 62 now. But I mean, yeah, and you were a teacher and you were opposed to it. But some teachers I knew wanted to get kids on those drugs immediately.
Terrible. I think you putting children on drugs is the height of child abuse, and the mere fact they can institutionalize it by you doing it in what's required for you to a place where you're required to go, and they can in fact do that to you under force of the state is a tragedy that is beyond comprehension. But that's what they're doing to children right now because they don't understand the connectivity of all the classes to each other and how each of them have to work as a seamless whole to get the job done of educating the whole child. But the gym class is very important in that regard because you have to take the energy level of the child down so you can then get to the classes where he's able to then more calmly sit there and take in the communication. Because children are not really made to sit down. They're kinetic. They're made to move. And they have too much energy to be sitting in a chair. One class, they sit there for an hour. They get up and move 5 minutes to get to the next class. It's down for another hour. And they're sitting all day with all that energy stored up. And by the 5th hour, before the bell rings to go home, they're sitting there so hyped up that they can't control it. and you give them drugs, and they had to come down from the drugs, which has been to stun them so they can't move. And then when they finally come down from the drug and they're moving, they don't know how to interact because they're not learn how to deal with that in a more calm state of mind. Their mind has been drugged, so when they come down, they can't deal with the pressure of interacting and so on and so. And that's why the children are going off. They don't understand why they're doing it, but that's why they're going off.
Well, you mentioned your school, then you were talking about Parker High School, right?
Parker High School.
Okay, see, I know, for those who don't know, I have friends that live in Alabama, and I brought up the fact you went there, and they said that was a significant school.
Very much so.
It produced a lot of leadership and a lot of people who went on, very noteworthy people. So I mean, and it was a predominantly black school at that time, right?
All black.
Yeah, so it wasn't desegregated, you know. And there was a high demand for, like you talked about, Miss Reed.
Miss Reed's
class. I mean, so that's like, and I had a teacher when I went to school who went to predominantly black school, historically black colleges and schools. Sadie McCrae, and you knew who she was, and she was more demanding than the other teacher I had. You know, she was, and I was a white student, and she was a black woman who educated in the black school system in the South. She was, I was angry with her because she kept me 3 hours after one day, 3 hours after school, 3 hours.
Yeah.
We went to school for 6, and now I'm there for 9 hours because of this woman, right? But I mean, as I got older, I really appreciate that. And I thought that was just remarkable that she was so challenged. She goes, I don't care if it's a white student or a black student. That's my student, and I don't want that mark against me.
That's right.
Yeah.
John, they would, if they would turn out the children today, back in the time period when they were in the classroom and teaching, they'd be going through cardiac arrest, every last one of them. If they thought they were turning out these kinds of students, these barbarians they're turning out now. Because their mission was to educate the whole child, and that some of it, in fact, Booker T. Washington is a good example of it, because Booker T. Washington was the one to create the 4-H club. The 4-H club was created by Booker T. Washington. The idea that you educate the head, the hand, the hygiene, and health. And they're doing it at the YMCA right now, but that's not where it was created. It was created in the South, in the Southern schools. Because the idea was to educate the total child so he's physically healthy. You know, another thing in that school system as well during that time period is that you came out with a skill. They had not only the fine arts training where you learn reading, writing, and counting, all that's very important. You need to be able to write well, you need to be able to read. Those are the constructs you got to have as basic. But what are your skills that you can do? What can you do with your hands? And we took sewing. Some of all the girls took home economics, where they learned how to cook and things like that. And I took up a sewing class when I was in 9th grade. I can still stitch, and I sew my clothes right now. And if I get a hold of my clothes, I know how to do the blind stitch and other kinds of stitches. I can still do it because you learn a trade. They were training the hands as well as the head, and your hygiene was important, and your health was important. So the head, hands, hygiene, and health. That's how they did it. You had a manual arts building.
I didn't know Booker T. Washington was connected to 4-H, because I've had 4-H people in here before, years ago, when we first started the studio. Woman used to live next door. She lives out in the country now, and she's heavily involved in it. You know, and she and her sons and her family members still into it. They're just a county fair in August. They were out there with their animals they raised to sell them and to like show them and stuff. So yeah, I mean that's significant. I mean everybody I know who's kids involved in that are straight thinking, focused on a career, even if it's not agricultural. They're focused on their careers. Every one of them I know is involved in that.
Yeah, look at all the schools down south that had. They would have like Alabama A&M. That'd be agriculture and mechanical. And you know that's nothing but Booker T. Washington. A lot of persons went to Tuskegee, and they were just so outdone that they were up there. They're going to school to get an education. Here they are up there, got a hammer in their hand, and they're up there putting nails in. They're up there building the school, constructing buildings. And they were saying that they didn't come to school for that. They went there to be able to recite poetry and learn Shakespeare. Okay, that's you can learn that. But the skill, what can you, when you come out of school, high school, what can you do? What are your skills that you carry into the marketplace? And that's nothing but those. If you go look at those schools, A&M, Tennessee State, Fish University. Look at all those schools and look at how they had some manual training that was in those schools. It was just the way in which it operated because you had to be able to do something.
Michigan State University was set up for that.
Yeah, very much so. I went there for a while. You have to. The question is, okay, you have all the book learning, or you've been trained into the book learning. You now can you should be able to read by third grade. Quite frankly, you should be able to do math by third grade. Be able to compute in your head. And they had you reciting your timetables, and you stand up and you go through your ABC. Oh, that's first, second, and third grade stuff. By third grade, you should be doing. We were doing long division, short division, fractions, and things like that, and we're doing that by third grade.
Now, you were a teacher again for 39 years. Nowadays, they're so concentrated and want to get funding to get technology into classrooms. Okay, I went to college for briefly after my mom. I left the university, working. I started taking class over Mott. I took a math class just for because I wanted to see if I could pass a math test. I haven't had in years. The woman who tutored me was from the country of Colombia. She was versed in mathematics, sciences, everything else. You can't tell me the country of Colombia, which is desperately poor on the average, has enough money, allocates more money than we do for educating their students. No, nowhere near that amount. But they're better educated without that much money being
Yeah,
spent.
and they're throwing a lot of money in these inner city schools, but they're never going to be able to achieve the objective by the amount of money they're spending. They spend more and more money, and the kids getting dumber and dumber, and they're not figured out that nothing is going to change until you change the paradigm in which you're educating children. Go back and look at some of those things they were doing and see which part of it has been thrown out of the process right now, and then that's where your answer is going to be found. Anyway, I want to deal some with this issue of this. I call it a false morality because I think altruism is a death knell for any society that's practicing it. You certainly see it here. We have a country right now. In fact, I heard Marjorie Taylor Greene. There was a program she was on where she is now calling for a referendum on a separation between the conservatives and the liberals because the shooting, for example, of Kirk was like the last straw. There are people that were laughing and cheering at this man being killed, and she was saying that in the and you saw the ruckus that they created in the Congress when they were saying, let's have a moment of silence for this man who was just sitting there holding court with about 3,000 students. And he's doing what he had been doing for um, 13 years, started 18 years of age. He's now 31 at this point. And just sitting there calmly talking to the students and taking on all comers. All comers. Didn't matter. Any question you wanted to ask. This guy was so gifted. And part of it was that he did not have all the training going to the ladder where you're getting more and more trained and more myopic in your training, where you're trained so narrowly. He was just a, a, a wide range thinker. And they asked him a question, and once he understood what question you were asking, he will give you an answer. And people were sitting there, and he's bringing these people in who are watching this and don't see this going on in the classroom. They're paying all this money to go to these highfalutin Ivy League schools, these elite universities. And this guy dropped out of junior college, and there he's speaking on this level, and they're talking on a different level, lower than the level he's speaking on, and they're riveted to that because they're not hearing that in the classroom. What they're doing in those classrooms is such that these children, when they have a problem, they go into a certain amount of uh, what's that word? Withdrawal. A certain amount of withdrawal. They can't stand the pressure. Things do not go perfectly right. There's a storm in their path. They don't know how to get that stone out of the way, and they're confused because here's a problem. What do you do? And they're panicking, and when they have problems, teachers in the classroom serving hot chocolate and cookies to calm them down and things like that. What is this? When Mrs. Sampson had passed, we went. Everybody was hollering in the school and wailing and all that. The school remained calm. I didn't understand what was going on, but we were told that she was gone, and they expected us just to be able to deal with it. My brother drowned in high school right in Detroit at 15 years of age. I was in Birmingham at the time, and I came home from school, and everybody was at the bus line. And as I got off the bus, people wanted to carry my books, and that was unusual. And just so many people at the bus line. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I began to ask about. I thought it was my immediate, my other brothers, and my sister. Only one brother went to sit with my father. He wanted to go up there and get a high school diploma from Highland Park High School. That way, he'd be able to go to junior college free. And when he finished high school in Highland Park, he went to junior college in Highland Park free for 2 years. He was trying to go there for that reason. So he went there, and it didn't last. It didn't last out of. He didn't get past the month of September. He died on the 15th of September of 1958. And it was just such an abrupt thing. I can understand it now. Of course, I definitely understood. I'm 13. I'm 14 years old. He's 15. I can understand the permanency of death at that point. Didn't understand in first grade, but I understood it. And I'm now in I think I'm in ninth grade, maybe 10th grade. I know I'm four, I know I'm 14 years old, and so I think I'm in ninth grade. I think I'm in ninth grade. I knew when I began to ask, where's William? Where's Lawrence? Where's Barbara Jean? Because I knew something was wrong. And when I got home, everybody was all the people in the community were at my house, and they were comforting my mom. And then that's when they told me what had happened, and that was just really overwhelming because he was there a month before, and then he's not there. And that happened so abruptly. That was in 1958. I haven't gotten over it yet. From 1958 to 2025, I have absolutely never gotten over it. So I can imagine the trauma of those children and the trauma for the mom to be asked that question and then have to give them an answer that they can understand that their dad's never going to come back, and how excruciating that was when you see how they were as a family and how this man handled his children. He loved his children. His children loved him back. And she loved him and he loved her back. And her prayer was that she wanted to be shown how she could be a better wife. That would be the wife that Charlie Kirk needed for him to do the job he was doing. because she wanted to assist him in the work. It's fitting that she is now over the organization because they shared the same mission. Every Friday or Saturday, I think it was Saturday, he would give her a report on what he had accomplished that week, what had happened. He wanted to share that with her because they were on the same mission. They shared the same goal. It's fitting that she's in that role. But I did not really appreciate her saying and finding the strength, almost whispering it, because it's so painful to do that, to be saying, and I forgive him. I understand you, Miss Erica Kirk, and I appreciate the sentiment. I don't appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate your your openness to your humanity, but that's a false morality that you are in fact practicing. Because if you kill somebody that you're married to and your children are now at a loss for their father, forgiveness is not the right response to it. It's not the appropriate response. If you love your husband, the morality demands that you hate the person who killed him. If you love God, you got to hate the devil.
I never thought of it that way. That's. I mean, I agree with that, but I just never thought of it that way. It's like, I
You
mean,
you cannot forgive the man for taking your father's children away from your father's children were killed by this man. They would grow up now. I think what one's like 4 years. I forget what the ages are. Very young. I don't think they're even in. I don't think they're even in elementary school. I could be wrong about that, but I know they're very young, and they got to grow up for the next how many years going through. The dad will miss their elementary school. He'll miss their having finished elementary school and going to the high school. He won't be there for the graduation from high school. Won't see them going to college and then getting married. Will not be there for their wedding. He took all that from them. The response cannot be, Father, forgive him because he doesn't know what he's doing.
I like to bring this in too. The Christian says, "Pray for your enemies and do good to them," but it doesn't ever say they now no longer your enemies.
They're not. They're right, John. But the idea that you pray for them, you pray if you're praying with over you about your enemy, you're praying that you have the strength to resist what he intends to do because that person has to be stopped.
That's the point. My point, though. I mean, it's like we still have an enemy. It doesn't say you're reconciled, become friends. They're still your enemy.
Yeah, you have to. This guy. What really made this so bad, worse than it already was, as if it could get worse, was that this guy intended to get away with it. It was not like this guy had plotted that I hate this guy so much I got to get him. But after that, I'm gonna take myself out. This guy was trying to get away with that, and he didn't intend to get caught. He was telling his trans boyfriend. You can say trans girlfriend. You're not transing anything from male to female. You can forget that. You a male in the bedroom with another male, and you're not transing out of that. You got two males in that bed together. You can claim whatever you want to claim, but that's who you are. And you're bringing all this stuff into the Biden administration with this man dressed as a woman is wearing his uniform and spreading this nonsense all through society, and people are buying that because you're not supposed to this with this morality. You're not supposed to criticize a person because they're making their own choice. We have to flout. We have to tolerate that and flout that in front of our children, and let these persons read these, come in these classrooms and read stories to these children and bring them up through that idea that anything goes, and you should not be able to tell who's a man, who's a woman, because they can choose themselves what they want to be. It's a matter of choice, as if nature doesn't dictatorially demand what the choice is. It doesn't ask you for your permission. It tells you what the choice is.
Well, see, they say I got a right to do this as an individual. Then you have a right. Then you're demanding that the right for everybody else to ignore you, or to accept you, or to just be blasé about you, or to be indifferent to you. It's got to be removed from them, and you mandate to their your narrative about yourself, even though it's not very apparent. We have to accept that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. I don't accept it. I'm not for taking any of your rights away from you. You still have the same rights under the Constitution. You have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, just the same as I do. I'm not taking any rights away, but I do not have to bow down to what you are telling me that you made a choice to be, because that's your choice, and I have to accept it as your. I don't accept it as your choice. I say that you perverted. I do not say then, in the aftermath of having said that we ought to in fact discriminate against you because of the choice that you made. But for you to tell me I have to accept that choice as if I have to go along with it, I don't go along with it. I criticize it and point it out as a perversion because you were born male or female, and it's binary. Nature deals with binary, male, female, right, wrong, up, down. Those kind of those kinds of things are already determined before you get here. You can't go in here and start changing the landscape because you're not satisfied with it and want to alter it because it doesn't suit what you feel you ought to be involved in, and you want to bring about something different and want the result to be different. You just can't order it that way because nature's already made an order before you got here, and it doesn't ask for anybody's permission in order for you to in fact accept it. It doesn't accept that if you jump out of a window, you're not gonna jump out and just stay there with if you hold your arms out. If you jump out that window, you're going down. It doesn't ask your permission to that. That's already ordered in the environment because you didn't make that decision. You cannot alter it because you don't accept it. They used to have children jumping out of the window because they thought that Superman was actually flying when it was George Reeves playing on TV, the Superman on TV, and children thought they could jump out that window like he was doing. No, didn't know he had a mattress on the other side. He jumping out, then he had a mattress on the other side of the wall. You couldn't see it, and thought the guy was jumping. And before you knew it, they had the next segment. They splice the film and then show him like this right here. He's not even moving. They can do that just by having him holding his hands out, and then have a blow, and like the guys flying, they thought they could do that and jump out the window and go straight down. You'd be surprised how many children would do that, but they could not suspend the law that if you jump out, you don't have enough volume, or you have too much volume, you just can't flap and stay up there like the bird does. They jump out and go straight down, and they had reports all the time about that happening because children don't understand that you can't defy. Well, and people don't understand it now. Adults don't understand. You can't defy Mother Nature. Mother Nature is dictatorial, and it doesn't ask permission for it to exist. When in the biblical text, when it says, "And God said, let there be light," it doesn't say for you to come behind and say, "Boom." If you want a darkened room and you don't have a switch in there, you can't turn that darkness off. Every room is that light has to be ordered, and it's ordered now in the rooms through the switch. Every room is dark, and people say that the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. That's true, but what's the speed of darkness? Nobody can clock that speed. You know why? Because when light get there, darkness has already arrived. Nobody knows the speed of darkness because darkness is already there. When you go somewhere and you're arriving there, let's say you're going to your home, and my dad used to tell me when we come back late at night from church on Sunday, he said, "I hate to go into a dark house." So he would leave a light on in one of the rooms so he could have some light when he walked in the door. But then when he walk out of that room into the next room, that light in that room had not penetrated the other room. It's dark in that room because the darkness precedes the light, and the light has been commanded. Let there be light, and you are going to order it. You can't change that. If you got a flashlight, you can see it a little bit better because you can see the orderliness a little bit better because if you got a flashlight, that flashlight that you have until it hits the surface, you don't see what's going on here, but that light on that flashlight is really grabbed by that darkness. Until it hits the surface, it doesn't focus on anything. It's just out there getting gobbled up by the darkness. It's been ordered. You cannot change that. You can't think it out of existence. You can't worship it out of existence. And they say it is because it just is. There's something, one explanation I always give you is that it just is. That's just the way it is. It's been ordered. And so this idea that you're going to change what is moral and what is not moral, and you're going to dictate morality is Father, just like Father, forgive them for they know not what they do, or what Ayn Rand talks about, judge not. They get this morality where you judge not that you may not be judged. If you don't judge, nobody will judge you. No, the morality is judge and expect to be judged. I judge all the time.
That's exactly right. Everybody, it's mostly liberals, always say, "Judge not, lest be judged," and they do that, the mic drop. And then I said, "Why don't you read before what came before and what came after? And by the same standard, you'll also be judged." That means you're inviting people to be critical of you, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you are judged, then look at the judgment and find out if there's anything to it, because maybe it'll help you to become better. A world that is not judged is a world that is not critical enough to figure anything out. How are you going to get better if you cannot be critical of that which already exists? If you want to bring something else into existence, is even better. Now, here's the false morality I was talking about as we close down here. I want to read page 166, a little bit of the page on that on Bonnet's book. It's called The Runs of Empire by C.F. Bonnet, a French writer back in the 18th century. This is a book that was in Thomas Jefferson's library. Jefferson, spoke French and read this book in French. It's translated now, and I got a translation of it in English. But I mean, my language in college was I murdered Spanish. I didn't take Spanish. Spanish took me. But here's what the book says about this false morality. Your so much boasted precepts of turning one cheek after the other is not only contrary to every sentiment of man, every sentiment, but is opposed to all ideas of justice. It emboldens the wicked by impunity. They can do what they want to do, knowing there's no penalty. It emboldens the wicked. with impunity. Debases the virtues by civility. They're cowering down like cowards. Delivers up to the world to despotism and tyranny, and if allowed to go on, and it dissolves all society. This decadence you're seeing right now, where you got to put troops in the national capital of the country. You got to put federal troops in there. And now Trump said in his speech that they're going to do the same thing in Memphis. He told him that he told uh, Brandon Johnson he's coming to Chicago, and they're biting their nails. He and J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, they're biting their nails because if he goes there and cleans it up, it will then point out even more so the false morality and also how these people are sitting over a criminal enterprise, allowing this criminal behavior to fester out of control like they've done. And they should be in prison for what they've done to this country. If Donald Trump goes in there and does in Chicago what he did in Washington, D.C., it's going to be a great contrast. And I want somebody to go and look at this black woman on that one. I posted my stepson sent it to me, and this black woman is saying, "Mr. President, I respect you, and I know what you're trying to do, but Mr. President, let them be. Let them bury their children, Ray, Pookie, and so on and so forth, because that's what they want. They want to fly their balloons and make their T-shirts, R.I.P., rest in peace, and that, because that's what they want." And she's saying, "Let them be." Well, that's the morality you're practicing, and that's why you have the Charlie Kirks being sacrificed. These people being made into a sacrificial animal and being sacrificed the way that they are. And that serves no one. A great man, they had a lot to offer. They were talking about this man being president when he was 18 years old. Rush Limbaugh thought he would be president one day. That talent was just like that. I'll say this and then I get off the air. At 18 years of age, he had no money in his pocket, a few dollars, with the idea of setting up Turning Point USA. And he was talking his idea, and this married couple saw this man was something unusual. They told him, if you want to raise $50,000, you don't have any money, but if you raise the first $25,000, we'll give you the other $25,000. And told him they didn't think he'd be able to do it. And within a month time, that man came back and asked for that $25,000 that matched the $25,000 that he had raised to set up Turning Point USA. This is an unusual man. And they took this man out of the world. And we're going to say, forgive the man that did it? No. That false morality doesn't fly here. That's altruism. And what we need to do here is practice real morality, an eye for an eye. And it's not the penalty that's the most important thing. It's a certainty of the imposement of it. As long as you know the certainty of the penalty and know that it's certain, you'll stop the behavior. And if you don't learn that, look at how they were sitting down in those classrooms when I was coming through without Ritalin, and look how you can't get them to sit down with Ritalin today in the classroom. Because the morality has been shifted away from what it was to altruism, and altruism does not work because it's a false morality. Okay, I'm very sorry that we lost a good man. He would have been proud of what happened yesterday in that 5-hour ceremonial send-off that he experienced. His wife also on the stage and all the cabinet members and that. They did a wonderful job, well organized. But we lost a good man, and his false morality has been confronted. Okay, going to have to get out of here. Until next week, we want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.